Is this really all life is? The question hit Alex like a punch the moment his alarm shrieked. Another day, same disillusionment, just this soul-crushing, endless cycle. Despair was a heavy cloak he couldn't seem to shake. But then, out of nowhere, a memory, a line from something he'd idly scrolled, start each day thanking God. Alex scoffed. God? Seriously? Thank God for what? His skepticism immediately shot back. My delightful pile of overdue bills. The idea of gratitude felt like a bad joke. Still, a tiny, almost annoying flicker of curiosity, born purely from desperation, pricked at him. Could something so simple, so Pollyanna-ish, actually make a dent in this profound weariness? Could a morning reflection offer any real hope? Probably a waste of time. But then, a defiant thought, what if it wasn't? What if this was the one thing he hadn't tried? Fine, he mumbled to the silent room, what have I got to lose? He had no clue that this grudging decision, this first tentative step onto a path of thankfulness, was about to change his entire world. That grudging decision, his first tentative step onto a path of thankfulness, felt more like an awkward stumble in the dim light of the next morning. Alex stood by his window, the city still mostly asleep. Okay, God, if you're even a thing, he mumbled, feeling utterly ridiculous, thanks for those pigeons, I guess. He cringed internally. Pigeons? Seriously? This was going nowhere. Yet, the memory of that challenge, start each day, nudged him. So, he tried, clumsily. Thanks for the air I'm breathing. Obvious, yet he'd never once thanked anything for it. Thanks for waking up. Yesterday, that very fact had felt like a burden. Now, was it a gift? The question hung in the air. He recalled the reflection he'd stumbled upon emphasizing that life itself is a profound gift, something we habitually take for granted. How many thousands of heartbeats had he ignored? He pushed himself to list more, the simple strength to rise from bed, the fact his legs could carry him. Each acknowledgement was like uttering a foreign phrase, his skepticism battling this new, uncomfortable vocabulary of gratitude. There was no sudden revelation, just a man wrestling with his own cynicism and a dawning, almost begrudging, awareness of the vastness he'd been too wrapped in despair to see. Could simply naming these overlooked realities actually change the deep-seated disillusionment? Or was this just another morning reflection destined to fade by lunchtime? Later, the stress of his commute hit hard. The city was a blur of noise and pressure, his mind already a checklist of anxieties. His earlier, fumbling attempts at gratitude felt like a distant, naive dream. Then, it happened. Cutting through the urban clamor, a street musician coaxed a heartbreakingly beautiful melody from an old violin. The notes soared, piercing Alex's weary defenses. He found himself stopping, just for a breath. And as he listened, an entirely unexpected sensation unfurled within his chest, a warmth, a quiet expansion, a feeling so alien he almost didn't recognize it. Could this be joy? A wave of pure, unbidden gratitude washed over him for this simple, perfect sound, this tiny island of beauty. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a genuine, if fleeting, new perspective flickered within him. It was as if a long-closed window in his soul had cracked open, letting in a single, astonishing ray of light. For a few precious moments, the crushing weight felt less. The relentless inner critic was, astonishingly, quiet. This unexpected joy, this awakening, maybe there was something to this. Maybe. But how resilient is a feeling sparked by pigeons and a street violin against the daily grind? Reality, as it always does, answered with brutal efficiency. That afternoon, a critical work project imploded. An email delivered the bad news, and just like that, the fragile warmth vanished, doused by a familiar surge of frustration and biting anxiety. The knot in his chest was back, a cold, hard reminder of his usual state. Right, Alex thought, his voice laced with an old bitterness. Transformative gratitude. Sure. The brief hope of the morning now seemed like a cruel taunt. Was that all it was? A momentary emotional high, easily shattered by the first sign of trouble. The despair he knew so well began to creep back in, potent and persuasive, leaving him to question if this delicate, newfound light could ever truly withstand the darkness he felt was his life. That lingering question, whether any newfound light could withstand his life's encroaching darkness, was answered with brutal speed. The darkness didn't just knock, it kicked the door in. It figures, Alex bit out, the words tasting like ash as he stared at the email. Devastating. His largest client, his financial lifeline, was gone. Just like that. Financial ruin wasn't a distant threat, it was breathing down his neck. So, feeling thankful now, are we? The old, sneering voice of his cynicism cackled in his head, sharp and triumphant. A wave of cold despair, quickly followed by hot anger, swamped him. What was the actual point of this gratitude experiment? Those fleeting moments of warmth now felt like a cruel mockery. He was ready to give up, to consign the whole idea to the scrap heap of failed self-help attempts. He nearly hurled his laptop across the room. But then, something stopped him. A memory, faint but persistent, surfaced through the rage, a core message from that reflection he'd initially dismissed, something about a deeper, an ultimate reason for gratitude, one that wasn't dependent on good news or a healthy bank balance. Something about sacrifice. The idea felt almost offensive in his current state of panic. Still, it pulled at him. Alone in his dimly lit apartment, the glowing screen a testament to his looming failure, Alex reluctantly reopened the notes he'd taken. The words about Jesus Christ, about a love that chose to suffer, initially felt too vast, too abstract to penetrate his very concrete crisis. How could something from millennia ago matter now, with his career imploding? He grappled with it, his skepticism warring with a desperate, unspoken need for an anchor. Then, a particular phrase seized him, words he hadn't truly registered before: He chose to suffer and die on the cross for your sins. He endured it all, so you could be reconciled with God. He chose to suffer, for you. For him. Alex, who felt like a total failure. The sheer, unmerited nature of such a love, such a sacrifice, began to chip away at his hardened despair. No, the client didn't magically reappear. His financial problems didn't vanish. But an almost imperceptible shift began within him. This wasn't about his circumstances suddenly improving, it was about a profound, unconditional love that existed entirely outside of them, regardless of his failings. The dawning realization was quiet, not a thunderclap. Perhaps his worth wasn't dictated by his professional success or his ability to cope. Even now, amidst the wreckage, could it be that he wasn't truly alone? The internal battle raged, but the words, "He chose to suffer for you," became a tiny, persistent light. Looking at his dire situation, the fear was undeniably still there, yet it was no longer all-consuming. A strange, new awareness of not being utterly defined by this disaster, not completely abandoned in his struggle, began to bloom, a fragile, yet unshakable seed of hope, planted right in the eye of the storm. That unshakable seed of hope, fragile yet persistent, began to nudge Alex from the eye of his storm toward an unfamiliar shore. The crisis hadn't magically vanished, the financial wolves were still at the door. Yet, the raw, consuming panic had ebbed, replaced by a tentative, almost bewildering calm. He stood at a crossroads, the landscape of his life starkly illuminated. The old question, how will I survive, was subtly morphing into something far more profound. If that unconditional love I briefly touched is real, how do I actually live as if it is? The thought was both a lifeline and a terrifying leap. He recalled the prayer he'd revisited, its talk of deep trust, of surrendering everything, fears, ambitions, the illusion of control. Could he truly do that? Let go. The very idea felt like stepping off a cliff. Yet, what other path was there? He decided to try, focusing on the immediate, crushing weight of potential eviction. In the quiet of his small apartment, he attempted to consciously hand over this specific worry. It felt profoundly awkward, a forced, clumsy gesture. His mind, conditioned by years of self-reliance and anxiety, rebelled instantly, screaming a litany of what-ifs, urging him to snatch back control, to scheme, to do something. The internal battle was fierce. This is ridiculous, his cynicism sneered. But the newer, quieter voice, the one that had recognized that flicker of hope, countered, but what if it's not? He held on to the intention of release, visualizing the heavy burden lifting, being placed into unseen, far more capable hands. Was he doing it right? He had no idea. A few days passed. No miracle checks appeared in the mail. Then, an old colleague, someone he hadn't connected with in ages, called unexpectedly, just to see how he was. In the flow of conversation, a small freelance project was casually mentioned, not a game changer, but astonishingly, just enough to cover the looming rent, a tiny patch of solid ground in a sea of uncertainty. Alex was taken aback. Coincidence? Perhaps. Yet, a profound sense of peace settled over him, a gentle affirming presence he connected to the prayer's mention of the Holy Spirit's guidance. It wasn't a shout, but a quiet whisper of reassurance that he wasn't navigating this disaster entirely alone. This unexpected solution felt like a quiet affirmation. This experience spurred him on. He bought a simple notebook and began a gratitude journal, a conscious effort to build the blueprint of a thankful life. He documented the call, yes, but also the tiny, often overlooked daily graces, the taste of his morning coffee, a moment of quiet in a bustling day, even a lesson learned from a difficult interaction. Some days, writing anything felt like a monumental effort, the despair a heavy fog. But he kept at it, this meticulous, sometimes painful, process of noticing. The true test, the real climax of this burgeoning trust, arrived with another sharp setback. A promising new lead, one he'd allowed himself to build significant hope around, suddenly evaporated. The old Alex would have been instantly consumed by despair, the familiar spiral into hopelessness inevitable. For a moment, the icy tendrils of panic did indeed reach for him. But this time, something anchored him. He felt the sting of disappointment, keenly, yet beneath it, that fragile seed of hope had taken root, drawing strength from this newfound practice of trust. He took a deep breath, consciously surrendering this new wave of worry, remembering that inner resilience that wasn't solely his own. The problem still hurt, but it didn't shatter him. Instead, a quiet determination filled him. He would persist, he would adapt, but the ultimate weight was no longer his alone to carry. This ability to absorb a blow without collapsing felt like a quiet, profound victory. The secret to unwavering joy, he began to understand, wasn't the absence of storms, but the discovery of an unshakable anchor within them. He sensed, with a dawning awe, that this journey of thankfulness, this unfolding divine plan, was a continuous adventure, and a quiet excitement for what lay ahead began to stir. That quiet excitement for the unfolding adventure became the very fabric of Alex's days. Years later, he often found himself by that same window, yet the man looking out was not the same. The world still presented its challenges, life its imperfections. But the crushing weight of despair vanished, replaced by a deep, abiding thankfulness, a resilient joy that permeated everything. So, this was the secret, he'd muse, a gentle smile playing on his lips. His journey had been transformative, from bitter skepticism to discovering simple gratitude, from finding an unshakable anchor in God's profound love and Christ's sacrifice, to finally learning how to live a surrendered, trust-filled life. It wasn't a magic pill, he understood now, but an ongoing practice, a daily choice. Often, a simple, heartfelt prayer would escape him, "Thank you for this path, for all of it." It was an echo of the profound peace he now carried, a testament that this journey to joy, this transformed life, begins with that first, courageous step into the light.